www.massdevelopment.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate may do so in the following manner: by finding the meeting at southboroughtown.com /remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite this effort, we will post on Southborough's website an audio, video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording record proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All right. Thanks, everyone. So who do we have here? Sorry. All right, so John's not here. So I can give a quick status update on the downtown district zoning bylaw. There's not too much to report. We had a meeting on Monday where we—
Sorry, Julie, you want to just call the meeting to order?
Oh, sorry, meeting is called to order. It is 8:22. Yeah. Thank you, Marika. I'm out of practice. I haven't had my coffee yet.
They're with you. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Sorry. So a quick update on downtown. I think we mentioned last time, and it's been confirmed, we're postponing, unfortunately, the article to a special town meeting in the fall. While at first this sounded disappointing to me because I know we've been working so hard for so long to get it ready for this one, I do think there are some benefits to postponing it. Most importantly being that, you know, this agenda for the May 22nd meeting is going to be very, very long. We are article number 40. We're going to need people who can be there and stick around. And I think ideally we would be able to put on a presentation, which would be very difficult outside. We can't use a projector or anything. We'd be relying on handouts, which I just don't think has the same effect in helping explain some of the technical changes that are being made, and, you know, how this could affect downtown for the better without making any, you know, drastic or crazy changes, you know, making sure that the downtown area is still protected. So I think that will be easier to explain, you know, with a projector in a hopefully indoor setting in September, which is when they anticipate trying to hold a special town meeting. So that being said, we're still working through a couple open items, but, you know, my goal is to make sure that we keep momentum going. We had a very productive meeting on Monday with Adam Costa. And also the other piece of that is that we want to make sure we're reaching out to the people who are affected by the split lot. So that process has begun. In our meeting on Monday, we discussed a few different ways of doing this. So Lisa was going to go back to the Board of Selectmen and just get some clarification on exactly how they wanted to do it, whether it was going to be, you know, a more individual reach out or a small, or, you know, everybody together. But we do have a letter that we're getting ready to send out. The goal is to send it out this week. I'll check with Lisa and make sure that that's, you know, going to be finalized. So, you know, one of my concerns with moving it forward was that, you know, we have a lot of good momentum right now, but I think we can keep that momentum going, work out the final kinks, and hopefully have a really clean bill proposal for town meeting in September. So that's about it there. While we're talking about downtown, Claire, do you want to give an update on the wastewater management?
Sorry, Julie, just to butt in. Is it maybe a good idea to first have our guest, Mr. Dolan, present?
Sorry, absolutely. Yeah, no, yes, thank you for pointing that out. We can take care of that.
I just realized that, so then we can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I didn't realize he was on already. So, Mr. Dolan, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Rob's done a great job of introducing the concept of district improvement financing for us, and it's something that we're certainly interested in and we want to learn more about. So if you're ready, let's take it away, and we'll finish up the rest of our business after. Thank you, Marika.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad there's not technical difficulties today, so you can actually see me and hear me, which is always good. Yeah, Rob Anderson, he's a colleague of mine in MassDevelopment. He had mentioned you folks were interested in potentially learning more about district improvement financing, which is a tool that we help administer to a number of different municipalities throughout the state that a number of different municipalities have used and found useful. So I'm going to pull up the deck on my screen. I'm going to share it. And if there's, any issues, I'll just kind of ask maybe Rob or somebody else could help with it. But I don't think there should be any issues once I, let me just grab it real quick. All right. Oh, it says the host disabled attendee screen sharing. Oh, okay, good. Got it. Let me see here. All right, can you guys see that? Okay, good. Just okay. So MassDevelopment. I'm not sure of your exposure working with MassDevelopment. I'm sure Rob Anderson obviously is a colleague of mine. He's great. He's probably told you about MassDevelopment. I'm sure you folks have worked with us in some kind of capacity. So I won't spend a lot of time on this slide or a lot of these slides. I'm going to briefly go over these just so I'll leave enough time at the end for questions that you guys have. Hopefully this is more of a discussion than me just kind of providing a presentation. But anyways, we're MassDevelopment, work with businesses, developers, municipalities, nonprofits, banks, through a number of different mechanisms, including real estate services, brownfield remediation grants, loans, guarantees, real estate planning and development services. And of course, we have a relatively new executive director, Dan Rivera, who is a former mayor of Lawrence. And so obviously he has a really great perspective on new folks and municipalities and the needs and the demands that you guys are facing nowadays. So it's been really awesome to kind of hear how he sees things and how he's informing kind of the agency's perspective. And I found it really refreshing, and he's been really great to work for. So today, what I'm give an overview is district improvement financing. It's one of the infrastructure bond financing programs that we can provide at MassDevelopment. We provide 3 different infrastructure financing programs. Diff is probably the most municipal centered. You guys really run the show on the district improvement financing program. It doesn't require state authorization. It's really in your wheelhouse to administer this and set this up. And I'll go into detail on that a little bit later. We also have the local infrastructure development program, and that is kind of a partnership with a developer. So it's a little bit more developer driven. Say there's infrastructure needs for a certain area, and he or she has development that they need public infrastructure to support. MassDevelopment can issue bonds to help finance those public infrastructure improvements. And the way the bonds are repaid is that there's an assessment on the property, like an additional tax that pays for the bonds. I can go over that in a greater detail another time if you want, but I was just going to focus on district improvement financing today just because of time constraints and cognizant of you guys have a lot of other stuff to work on. And then the final one is iCube. That's really for significant metro areas like Boston, Somerville, other areas like that have a new business coming in that needs public infrastructure, a significant new business coming in. And the state will pay for the public infrastructure. They'll issue bonds, but in order to pay off those bonds, they track the new tax revenue that the new jobs or new retail is bringing in. And so the new tax revenues have to be significant enough to cover the debt service on the bonds. So you really see these, there's only been 8 or 9 of them done in like the last 12 years. And I'll show you a couple of projects under there, but for your purposes, I think Rob mentioned district improvement financing, so that's pretty much what I'm going to focus on today. But if you have questions about any of these other ones, just feel free to fire away. Under all these programs, the kind of definition of what public infrastructure is very broad. If you look in the statute for each one of these, you can see any one of these is that, roadways, intersections, water and wastewater facilities and related lines, soft and financing costs. What we see a lot of is the streetscape, sidewalks, streetlights, wastewater treatment, sewer. Those are the most prevalent ones for district improvement financing. But like I said, it's the umbrella is pretty big for what infrastructure is eligible under the programs. So what is district improvement financing? So throughout everywhere else throughout the country, I think it's pretty much called tax increment financing. But in Massachusetts, we already have a TIF program that's totally different than tax increment financing. And so we had to come up with a different name. And so we came up with district improvement financing. It's been around for a while, since 2003. But there's been some significant changes to the statute, which I'll go over in a little bit, which has been favorable for municipalities. And so we've seen a lot of these crop up lately. So what is DIF? It's an economic development tool. In essence, what it does is enables communities to pledge future tax revenues from a designated area to plan economic development projects. So in essence, a portion of future tax revenue growth from public infrastructure improvements is used to kind of offset the cost of the capital improvements. So in essence, you find an area needs public infrastructure improvement. You track the incremental tax revenues. You set a baseline, then you track the incremental tax revenues and kind of segregate it for that area to help offset costs in that area for capital costs. So that's a high level. I'll go in more detail, like exactly what it is now. The good news is I'm kind of give you the very high level overview of district improvement financing, but we engaged a consultant, Camoin, about 2 years ago to develop a lot of tools to help municipalities and help inform municipalities execute district improvement financing programs if they so choose, because we saw a lot of these popping up, and obviously municipalities have a lot of other stuff on their plate, and so we felt like we wanted to give them as much information as we could. So on our website, MassDevelopment website, the links down below, you can see it. We have a diff guide. We have 3 webinars. I think each is like 45 minutes long. We have model documents. So for example, like what kind of documents you would bring to your respective town government to approve of a diff, or how to design a diff. We have case studies from a number of different seasoned towns throughout the state that have done district improvement financing. And also as part of this call, I'm going to give you an idea of exactly what we did within our town of Easton. We did a diff where I live. I think Rob had mentioned that to you folks potentially before. And also a couple other Caesar towns that have done it. So, but in addition, we have case studies online. And then I'm more than happy to share a couple names after the call with the appropriate person, municipal officials who have done a diff, and they can kind of give you the unvarnished feedback of exactly kind of the challenges, the obstacles that they faced, why they did a diff, are they happy with the diff, and what, other kind of any other questions that you may have that you want to ask, up here. We also have online tools, kind of do calculations if you want to just kind of play around, if you have an idea like what, the cost of public infrastructure might be, or if you're going to issue debt. And then as part of the whole process, the diff guide, Camoin Associates actually they were hired to provide technical assistance to cities and towns to implement the diff. And as they did that, they developed the diff guide. And so they used the lessons learned from that. And so we have a FAQ online that also answers a lot of those questions. Regarding technical assistance grants going forward, previously cities and towns have applied through us, through our technical assistance grant program, to potentially fund a consultant that would come on and help them out with the visioning and identifying public infrastructure needs and kind of doing a market analysis and all those other items. But I'm not sure if Robin mentioned this to you before, but he can probably provide you more background on it. But the Commonwealth has a new program. It's called the OneStop Community Growth, where communities now go through one entry point for all their grants from across the agencies for different points in their project development. And so I think the way they foresee it is, if this is something that you guys are interested in, this would be something that you apply through the OneStop program at the Commonwealth's unveiled recently. And I think Rob probably has better knowledge of that. So if you guys are interested, I'm sure you can just grab your colleague on that and he can help you out with that. So how does DIF pay for economic development? There's multiple reasons why municipalities do DIF, but probably the most prevalent one that we've heard is that it communicates that a district is targeted for growth and states the community's goals. So when you create a DIF, you have to identify the boundaries of the area that you really want to invest in. And you have to come up with a development plan. And so that helps the community kind of come together and facilitate and come together to identify exactly what they want to do in that area. and that lends itself to kind of identifying its goals, and that helps communicate to other commercial entities that may be relocating exactly. All right, for example, at Easton, we have a commercial area called Five Corners. It's all on septic, but they're undergoing, they're establishing sewer and wastewater lines. So obviously, if you're a commercial entity, that's much more attractive than having to operate a business on a septic tank. And so it's an economic development tool to kind of identify that you're improving in certain areas, public infrastructure. And so what really happens is there's two different ways. There's two main reasons why people do a diff. It helps kind of unify the municipality about like, all right, we have a vision, we have priorities, we have goals. Let's kind of segregate that tax revenue and pull together a plan. Another reason they do diff is because under state finance law, when you issue bonds, you have to do it in a certain kind of level debt service borrowing. Whereas in diff, because of the mechanics of diff, which I'm going to get in a little bit sooner, the drafters of the diff statute understood that the new tax revenue that was coming online was probably going to lag after the public infrastructure work was done. And so what it does, it allows the municipalities, if they issue bonds, to structure the debt so the principal and the interest payments are pushed back a few years to allow that tax revenue to come on and flow through their operating budget so they can actually fund the debt service. And so, for example, Somerville, the reason they did a diff is they realized that it would help their kind of debt service structure and provide them kind of operating budget relief in the early years. And so that's a really financial side of like why you would do a diff, in addition to, the whole idea of kind of like identifying a certain area that you want to do public infrastructure investments in. A third reason, for example, my town of Easton, what they did a diff for is, like I mentioned, the Five Corners, it was on septic, it was going to sewer, but it needed a significant amount of public infrastructure work. And so what they did is they established a diff, the area where they're gonna, the area was Five Corners. They established a baseline tax revenue of what they were receiving, and then they tracked the incremental tax revenue growth. And what they were gonna do with the incremental tax revenue growth is offset the betterment assessments that were being levied on those folks that were in that area. And so to fund the public infrastructure work, there was a significant amount of betterment assessments that had to be applied to a number of those folks that lived in that area. And they said, to help mitigate this, what we'll do is any tax revenue growth from increased economic development in that area because of the public infrastructure we'll take and we'll apply it to kind of help offset your betterment assessment. And so that's just kind of a number of different, that's a flavor of like why folks are doing it. So what DIF is, it's a locally designed and a locally approved tool. So you don't need state approval. You guys can develop it however you want. You guys can set the boundaries. You can set the term of how long the DIF is, whether it can go up until 30 years, but you can set the term, it can be lower than that. You can set how much of the incremental tax revenues are applied to a TIF, how much is segregated. So you can do 100% of new tax revenue growth. You can do 25%. That's really all up to you and the part of your designing of the program. And also the tool can be used with a number of different grants. I get a question a lot is like, does this prohibit us from doing, MassWorks or something else? No, it can be used to supplement that. So it can be used in like I said, it's totally a local kind of informed program. So it doesn't preclude you from tapping other areas of grants. And like I mentioned, it's a written plan and expectations for a certain area. So DIF is not a new tax. So you're not levying a new tax, a new assessment, anything like that. You're literally just tracking the revenue, the new tax revenue growth in a certain area due to public infrastructure improvements. It's not a new guaranteed revenue stream. So this is what I tell all the municipalities is that if you issue bonds based on on your expected revenue growth for a certain area, and that revenue growth doesn't materialize, that's still a general obligation of the municipality. And so just to be clear that, if you do a district improvement financing plan and issue bonds to finance the public infrastructure improvements, if that new tax revenue growth doesn't materialize for whatever reason, you're still responsible to pay the debt service on the bonds that you issued. And like I mentioned, it used to be required that the state had to approve your district improvement financing. It's no longer that. you don't have to go through Economic Assistance Coordinating Council. So we've seen a lot of them kind of popping up because of that reason. So this is really just kind of the nuts and bolts of how Diff generates and captures new revenue. And so you can see this is just kind of a model of exactly what you would be looking at. It's pretty cut and dried. I sent this presentation to you folks, so if you want to go through this in greater detail, you can, but there are visual aids that, for example, Diff revenue captured. And so you can see the green bar. What you can do as well is, there's various stages in district improvement financing. You have to identify the district that you're going to capture the revenue in. You have to identify the district where you might invest the revenue in, and those don't necessarily have to be the same. So the district that you're going to capture the revenue in can be larger than the area where you're going to invest the revenue in. And so in essence, what you want to do, the first thing you really want to do if you're doing a district improvement financing and you're moving forward, typically is you kind of want to lock in the baseline revenue that you're receiving from those property taxes. That way you can now track the revenue, the incremental tax revenue as it grows. And so you can see in this chart, the baseline revenue is the green bar, and the diff revenue as it grows is the blue bar. And this changes based on what percentage of the new tax revenue you want to segregate for the district improvement financing plan. It could be 100%, it could be 25%. And also the horizon can change. So this is 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, 15 years. You can set up a district improvement financing for like 10 years. And then afterwards, it expires, and the rest, all that revenue is now freed up for the rest of the municipality. This is just another example exactly how tax increment financing works. So the type of investment that we've seen, capital and workforce investment, including the financing costs, workforce training, land and leasing. We've seen municipalities buy land through the district improvement financing, and most importantly, diff creation administration. And so, if you're hiring a consultant, one of the things you can do is pay them through the district improvement financing program. So this is kind of the acronym soup. It's a lot. It's kind of gets in the weeds, but in essence, to establish the district improvement financing plan, you have to establish the where the project will be implemented and where you're going to be tracking the tax revenue. And like I mentioned before, there's a diff district where projects will be implemented, and then there's the IRD, the invested revenue district, and that's where the tax increment will be actually captured. And so the IRD does not include the entire diff district, but it can not be within it. And so obviously one's got to be larger than the other. It's kind of self-explanatory. So other acronyms are the development program and invested revenue district development program. I mean, that's a mouthful, but in essence, really what you're doing is you're meeting as a town, and you're going over all your objectives of what you want with the district improvement financing program. Goals, what kind of infrastructure projects that you need, the broad financial plan. You're coming up with tax revenue forecasts of like, all right, if we build it, what kind of economic development are we looking at, and what kind of tax revenue growth are we forecasting that will go into a district improvement finance plan?
Now, Rob,
yeah.
Sorry, and this is where kind of hopping in with the question, that seems like an awful lot, but you had mentioned before the community one-stop, all of those things that are part of that, the financial projections, the identification of potential projects. We could go after a grant through the OneStop for technical assistance to get a consultant to help us do all of that, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Yep. And like I said, I'm more than happy to provide you the names with other folks that have done this. We did a workshop in Quincy almost a year and a half ago, because they did district improvement financing. And so MassDevelopment did a workshop in partnership with Quincy, where we brought various stakeholders and kind of did a walking tour of Quincy, of the public infrastructure that they invested in, and why they did a diff. And so, the gentleman who works there, Robert Stevens, he's very supportive of district improvement financing. It worked really well for them, and he's always happy to talk to folks. Attleboro is in the midst of doing a district improvement financing right now. They got a grant to work with a consultant to implement a diff. And of course, the folks from town of Easton, they're more than happy to talk to folks. I think Stephanie Danielson is the economic development person at Easton, and I have her contact information, and I'm more than happy to share it with you folks after the meeting if you're interested in talking to somebody else about this. But like I said, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about right now, I know I'm kind of like ripping through it, but a lot of the stuff I have, there's so much more stuff online that's at your fingertips if you're interested in learning more about this program. For case studies, like I mentioned, Somerville Assembly Square, they did a district improvement financing and an IQ project to redevelop that whole Assembly Square, which I'm sure you folks are familiar with up there. If you're bringing kids to Legoland or doing other stuff up there, or we're doing it before the pandemic. But they did a diff. Like I said, it helped them because of the way the statute was written. It helped them structure debt service, which was meaningfully helpful for their operating budget. And so they were able to structure the debt service so they didn't have to pay debt early in the life cycle of the public infrastructure improvements, which helped their operating budget. Brockton did a diff. This one was done a number of years ago. Rob May, who works at Brockton, he's very knowledgeable about district improvement financing. It was really successful there. As you can see, it helped pay for the parking garage. They did it for capital infrastructure, utility improvements, site acquisition, a number of different things. And so district improvement financing program can be more than about just one thing. So in like Easton, it was about, sewer lines, but, they're doing additional infrastructure work as well. And as you can see from the Brockton, they did a number of different things on there. And finally, this is just a local infrastructure development program I had mentioned to you folks, where property owners can finance public infrastructure. So in this case, a developer, like I said, he has a development, he or she has a development, maybe it's a multi-housing unit or a commercial development. The municipality doesn't have the capital bandwidth to invest in public infrastructure. And so the developer, in essence, offers to finance public infrastructure improvements through MassDevelopment. We issue a bond to pay for those, and it was repaid by assessments that are on the property, and the assessments travel with the land. So in essence, if the property is sold, it just travels with the land. It's like an assessment of property tax on the land, and it helps repay the bond. So that's helpful for the developers because they don't have to use their capital, and it's helpful for the municipality because in certain fiscal environments, their capital budget is straight out, and they want to support development, but they might be able to support the public infrastructure. So this is a viable option as well. And it's a locally, you have to go through local approval for the 23L, which isn't surprising, obviously. Anyways, there's my information. I'm happy to talk to people offline about this. If you want to give me a call or shoot me an email. I think that the stuff that we have online is really thorough, and some of it's high level, some of it's in the weeds. Everyone's different. Some people really like to get in the weeds, some people don't. I think the stuff online will be really helpful. The links on the PowerPoint. And like I mentioned, just high level overview, district improvement financing plan is really for a municipality to help them in a certain area invest in public infrastructure that generates economic development that helps the community. And so we really want this to be best fit for the community. We're not necessarily pushing this if this isn't the right fit for you, but if it is a viable option, we really want to support you. And obviously MassDevelopment, our doors are always open. We're happy to help you in any way we can. So with that, I'll open it to questions. I know I went quickly, so fire away if you have any questions.
Yeah. Rob, I'm Chris Robbins, and thank you very much. It's very helpful to know what resources are available to our towns and cities and what the state is trying to do to stimulate business, drive growth, and who is the target audience who needs this information so they can take advantage of it? It's one thing for us to hear it as a committee, and it's new to me. And who is the point person in typical towns and cities that's going out to the businesses or the private sector people, entrepreneurs who can take advantage of this? Is it the advisory committee that reviews all the budgets should know about this? Is it the Brian Ballantyne, who's the treasurer? Is it the selectmen who should be promoting this? How do you get the message out so people can understand this in layman terms? So how do we?
It's a great question. So it varies, obviously it varies town by town, city by city, but primarily I've noticed kind of the entry point to municipalities is their economic development planner. And then they'll work with, because they have an idea exactly what's going on in their municipality about like projects and public infrastructure needs. And then they'll reach out to internally to see if this is a viable option. And so I think Attleboro, like I mentioned, it was Catherine Fierick. She's economic development planner. I'm not getting the title exactly right, but economic development planners usually go in. Then they'll sometimes invite us to talk to, the town administrator and other folks. They socialize it. They kind of get used to it, and then they reach out to the businesses that are in that certain area and engage with them to see, just to let them know. So, for example, in the town of Easton, the businesses were really kind of happy that this was actually an option that was getting put forth by the town government, because it helped them with their betterment assessments if the incremental tax revenue materialized. So it really starts with the municipality, and usually the municipality's economic development planner. So, and then they bring it forth to the appropriate people in the public that this.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough. It's one thing for asking, the EDC coordinator, but educating the town administration, because it's just not us who are chasing or asking businesses to move in. The leadership of the whole town needs to understand that we have financial resources that will enable business to grow and prosper, and enabling them to communicate in layman terms that this is out there.
And Chris, one thing is that the Diff district and the plan has to be approved at town meeting. Right. So I asked Rob to talk to us first before we take it to the select board and the town administrator to see if this is something that we want to be advocates for internally. I think the great thing about the Diff program, which based upon our discussions in the past, we have infrastructure improvements along Route 9, where we've got an awful lot of businesses and can see some growth. We also have some, let's call them hurdles in our downtown as well. So the fact that we can have multiple Diff districts, the fact that we can come up with a plan for infrastructure improvements on both Route 9 and the downtown can actually help us when that economic development is attracted, pay for some of those things that will increase the quality of life for residents, which is kind of where I thought, but we're the first step, I think, before we take it to the town manager.
Okay, just another item. I know in Marlboro, they actually totally separate and different. I think it's still in place, but there's a hotel tax specially designed to promote economic development. I think it's 2% or something. And the Independent Economic Development Committee is given that money. I may be not stating it correctly, has access to those funds and makes recommendations for economic development purposes in Marlboro. So that's another venue. I don't know if you're familiar with it or if it has anything to do with Diff.
No, Chris, that doesn't have anything. I think we've spoken about this before. Marlboro has both the meals tax and the hotel tax.
Right.
And the hotel tax goes to pay for economic development, while the meals tax goes to pay for parks and rec. And so basically their thinking was, because people staying in the hotels aren't residents, they can help pay for the economic development initiatives, whereas the restaurants could be used to pay for those things that benefit the local residents, because more often than not, the people eating out at the restaurants are residents too. So I don't think that has anything to do with Diff.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm wondering if, Rob, if you or any of us have ideas of where this could be applied in Southborough, who could we go to right away?
I mean, I think it's worth getting the word out there, and maybe we just put something together to share with the Board of Selectmen and with Mark Purple. Your question was really good, Chris, because this is such great information and could be a useful tool, but where do we go from here to get something off the ground? So we don't really have the authority to make these decisions ourselves, but it's certainly within our purview to at least share the information and maybe offer some ideas about what areas of town we think might be good opportunities for this.
Yeah, I think Route 9 has the biggest potential for increased assessment and tax revenue. The CAS building has been empty for 5 years. And if someone were to come through and reinvest in the CAS building, the assessed value would go up. If you could capture that increased assessed value and devote that towards public infrastructure like sidewalks or a way to connect Route 9 to the downtown, those kinds of things, as long as it's public infrastructure. You could even say, hey, let's work on a bike path to connect Route 9 to the downtown. All of a sudden, if that's public infrastructure, we can purchase property, we can design the bike path and kind of take that next step. So it's the biggest bang for the buck may be the identification of Route 9. And I would say downtown would probably want to be part of that Diff district as well, because you'd want to be able to invest some money there as well too. That's simply my thinking.
I think that's a great idea. And yeah, I think the CAS building and the connection, I mean, we've been hearing for years from different members of the Board of Selectmen, and how can we connect the sort of two sides of town, and people have talked about pedestrian bridges over Route 9 and and closing the loop on some of the trails, so and connecting downtown with different parts of town. So yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity potentially that could accomplish sort of several of those things in one project maybe.
So the one question I get typically is from folks in municipalities is why would we do a diff when we would already do this? Like, we're going to invest in public infrastructure anyways. So why would we set up this program and put all these, it's for exactly the reasons that what you're discussing right now is to get people around a table and actually focus them on a certain plan, prioritize where they want to invest in, and then what they're going to do with those funds. And so, as you know, like sometimes through the municipal process, I mean, I used to work on budgets in state government and municipalities. It's sometimes it's hard to really focus the conversation and kind of put things in concrete, certain plans in concrete during the whole budget process and where funds may go. And so this is kind of a program that helps you get people together, do a vision charrette, identifying tax revenue, that where it may go and what's priority for public infrastructure. And so this program is really meant to do what you folks are doing right now and bring people around the table and kind of focus the discussion.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I was particularly interested, Rob, in your mention of Five Corners. One, I know the area a little bit, and that area could use some improvement. It's a bit of a challenge, but also because it is septic and you're trying to move to sewer, and that's something that I think would really benefit here. And I know from my own personal experience, but also from my limited time on this board, is if we can bring a like example to show like, hey, this is what something else is going on, it's very similar to what we're trying to do, that kind of carries a lot more weight, because it's almost, as opposed to trying to describe something in the abstract, something that's very, very similar to what we're trying to do would go a long way. So I'm a fan of using that as an example to help describe this.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought Rob also made a good point about bringing people together to focus, because, I think one thing that sometimes our town, and it makes sense, is not great at is sort of the the long-term big picture planning, and especially where many of the things that we've discussed come from, different little threads of ideas, whether it's, a downtown or Route 9 or some sort of connection, but sort of bringing all those pieces together and focusing on a long-term plan that, has a potential way to get paid for, I think is huge. So, it might be the kind of thing that we'd want to, talk about with having people from different committees come together to talk about. I mentioned it briefly. I said I represent EDC on the master plan committee, and I did mention that we were going to be having a discussion about this, and this could be one of the tools, potentially for future planning going forward. So, but yeah, I think that focus and that, is an important piece of it. And this could be the tool, the catalyst to bring some focus to some projects. All right. Does anyone have any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Of course, Claire. I'm not even the chair. I have no authority here.
Well, I don't have one of those little raised hand buttons, but what Mr. Dolan talked about, and you just said about the roundtable is fabulous. I think that now that the EDC is getting a much better handle on it, and particularly since we have Rob Anderson, just to differentiate between the two, the first step really is to bring this program in front of the selectmen, so that they understand what's going on. They are behind it, so that nobody on the EDC is spinning their wheels. After they get an agreement that they're supporting it, so that, in other words, they're kind of like the the cheerleader for the group. There are parcels along Route 9, which I think, just in hearing from what I had heard from Rob Anderson and now what Mr. Dolan talked about, that could all be identified. For example, going eastbound on Route 9, after you pass Crystal Pond Road, over on the right-hand side, obviously, is that big, huge chunk of open space property. The developer, knows that there is a septic problem, infrastructure, and it, to me, would seem like a perfect example of what this could work for. My question, I think, is, everything has been for the development of commercial type of things. So going forward, there's going to be revenue coming in from that. One of the examples that I was thinking of is building more affordable housing for the senior population here. Because one of the studies that was done just recently said the fastest growing population within Southborough is the 65 and over. It was one of the NASDAQ studies that was done as part of the school study. So anyway, that would be something that would certainly have an opportunity. You could even put in there some commercial business where you have like a small strip of stores, coffee shops, that the people living in that, don't forget, Madison Place put 600 units there. So something, maybe not 600, but so my point is that identifying these type of properties and then finding out from the owners, the business owners, because as Rob said, that there is money for the business owners too, and they would work with it, to be able to say, hey, you guys interested in this? If you go further up Route 9 going east at Woodland Road there, right next to Walgreens, there's that whole area that needs to be developed. I mean, there's half of Route 9 in Southborough has been beautifully developed by office parks, etc. The other half is a disgrace. So I think a plan to maximize the revenue out of those places is something that needs to be done. As Rob Dolan said, let's bring everybody around the table and see what we all agree on.
Yeah, Claire, you brought up a good point, and I never even thought about that. Rob, if we were to say that the seniors in town over 65 were something that we would want to address. And we wanted to put Diff money towards it. There would have to be a public entity creating those over 65 housing units in order to use Diff funds, or can you use Diff money for housing?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into that, Rob. Yeah.
Okay.
I have to figure that out. I haven't really. I mean, the program is pretty flexible, right? And so you're investing in public infrastructure, but then you're taking the incremental tax revenue and applying it to the ways that you want it to do under the Diff plan. So I don't think there's any restrictions on that, but I'd have to like to kick the tires on that just to make sure.
Yes.
It's one of the best kind of tax revenues you can have is from an over 65 or over 55 place.
All right. Well, thank you, Rob, so much. And I think, you know, us as the EDC, maybe we need to talk about, you know, if we want to share this with the Board of Selectmen, and how we go about doing that. And Rob, you know, we certainly appreciate your time, and we may ask you for a little more of it if you have some available, if we have some follow-up questions, or maybe want you to share some information with the board if you're willing to do that as well, because you say it so eloquently. But this is great information. We really appreciate it. And thank you. This has given us a lot to think about.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
we
have a
like
good one.
it.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Thanks.
So
Thanks,
before
Rob.
you go, Rob, can you make me the host again? Because
I think you
I
did.
thought I did.
You did.
thank you.
You are the host, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I thought I did. All right, see you.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob, for arranging that. That was very helpful and informative.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's, you know, I think this is something that the Board of Selectmen would have to take the lead on, because it does have to go to town meeting. The one thing I would say is that the community OneStop and the application for a grant to get a consultant to help on that, the OneStop is a yearly application. And the application opens up next Monday and goes through June, or we have to wait another year. And so the question is, do we want to think about trying to line up a grant and a consultant now, which would be awarded in September or October, working towards next year? Or do we want to do the marketing right now and then look to apply to the OneStop next May? That's the only thing I think we have to kind of focus on.
It's a good question and a good point, because in some senses, you know, we have the information right now. Why not start working on it and take advantage of it? But I also want to be careful not to get too far ahead of our skis before we even talk to the Board of Selectmen.
Exactly. It's a little bit, I find it kind of easy to understand, but I've just kind of dealt with lots of other municipalities, and I've heard Rob's presentation a couple of times. But what we don't want to do is overstep with the select board, because we definitely need their support.
I totally agree. And when's the open period? Through June?
Yeah, it's basically a full month, May 3rd through June 4th, I think.
And for us to initiate the process of starting this with the OneStop, I mean, at this stage, it's not that much work, right? Like, I'm just trying to think practically.
Well, what we would have to do is we would have to have someone write the application.
Okay, yeah, I'm a little worried timing wise, because again, I'm hesitant to do anything without presenting to the board first. And at this point, they had a meeting. Do they have a, so I don't know when their next meeting is. I'm trying to think of it.
Can I just jump in? So regarding the OneStop Grant program, so the town has submitted the expression of interest. And part of that was what can we do with Route 9 wastewater, but also kind of revitalize or improve the economic situation. So I know they have just this week, I think Mark Purple received a response, which he said he would distribute as soon as he had time to read it. But wouldn't that also be part of this? Like if we were to be, I mean, we need to still submit the official application. And I know that it's starting May 3rd and it's open till June 2nd. So we have that time to fill in the full application. Wouldn't that, to see what we can do and what economic development tools we could use as a town to improve Route 9, isn't this part of that already? I mean, that was my thinking. Like, I mean, they could suggest that, why don't you look at these options? We have these kinds of economic development tools.
So if the expression of interest is saying that downtown and Route 9 is a priority, and as a next step, that's what I've been hearing from everyone who's doing the application process. What is the next step from receiving the grant? If that study, an economic development study, says, hey, maybe you should think about doing a Diff for public infrastructure, that would set us up very well for the next round.
Yeah.
The one thing about the Diff is because it has to go to town meeting and you have to write up a development plan, that's a whole different thing than the one we're doing right now. So your point is very well taken, that if this consultant that we have coming in suggests a Diff, then all of a sudden it says, hey, listen, we got a grant from the state. It identified a second step and we're taking it. It's the type of story I think the state would like to hear.
Okay.
And as far as going to town meeting, I mean, we do have the advantages here. If the stars align, we have a fall town meeting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's.
Yeah.
So if I can just make a suggestion, there's the one stop that's currently going on. And then there's the second part of this to educate the Board of Selectmen on this. As part of the one stop, I can't believe that whoever is project managing the one stop, in order to get everything that is needed to be presented by June, should be having weekly meetings with the individual committees who have put in expression of interest. And the reason that I'm saying that is the silo mentality is not going to work here. Capital has put in for Route 9 improvements. EDC wants Route 9 improvements. All of this needs to be done in conjunction as a collaborative effort. That's to get the one-stop part done. So therefore, in a way, it kind of ties in. The second part is educating the Board of Selectmen. And I think that once they know what this is about, and then the next ones that you want to bring in as part of support on this is the advisory committee. And the reason is because this program is designed to bring revenue into the town. The advisory committee says this town doesn't have a spending problem, they have a revenue problem. And they don't want to nickel and dime budgets. They want to look at ways to bring in more revenue. So they would be the biggest proponent that you would have for this in presenting it to the Board of Selectmen.
Claire, those are awesome points. I completely agree. And I also, so I agree. There are two sort of separate points that you raised that I both think were really good. One is the administration of the OneStop program right now, because, even though we've put in our expression of interest, and even though it hasn't opened yet, we only have this sort of four
weeks
period. So, what are the next steps? And even though we as EDC can't submit it, what is our role in making sure that our priorities are staying on track? And how can we help to make it better? It should be a collaborative effort. So yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything on that. Marika, have you heard anything further since we submitted our expression of interest?
No, so that's why I haven't heard anything. I just happened to be in the office on Wednesday. So I bumped into Mark Purple, and he happened to mention that he did get a first response the day before, but he had not had the time yet to look at it, but he would, and then I guess distribute it. But I agree with Claire that the application is quite a big undertaking. There's a lot of information required. And it's vital that there's a project manager who kind of stays in touch with all the different committees. Like Claire said, it's capital, SHOPC, EDC, and I think some, all this financial stuff is very important. So we need to have a more, we can't have the EDC work on their part, submitted. It
needs to be
doesn't really
collaborative.
work. I mean, we managed with the expression of interest, but it wasn't a very, we need to have like a more comprehensive approach to this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Claire made a couple of good points, and one of them being, and we've talked about this before, that, we need to get out of this sort of silo mentality where EDC does this and, Trails does this, and, there's everything. That's not how our town works. And with a risk of putting on more meetings and having people further, strapped for time. I agree. It certainly sounds like an opportunity where it makes sense, even if it's just for this 1 month period, to bring representatives of different boards and committees together to make sure that with somebody who's sort of in charge of driving the bus, to make sure that that everything gets submitted is, we put forth the best application we can. So.
Yeah. Suzanne has her hand up. You want to say something? Oh, okay.
Sorry, my computer's on the fritz these days.
Just one other question, and Rob will be able to answer this better than I can, but he and I did talk about this. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you don't have to be a town. You can be a private developer to apply for the OneStop program. So my question is for a couple of the developers who own property, some of which I identified along Route 9, would it make sense for the EDC to reach out to those people and make sure that they know about it? Because I'd be willing to bet that they don't. And the particular property that I'm thinking about is the one that I mentioned eastbound on Route 9 between Crystal Pond and Parkerville Road.
I mean, yeah, we can definitely make them aware of the program and see, because I don't know, of course, what plans they have, if any, at the moment. I don't think they have, but it won't hurt.
Yeah. So, how do we want to, just to wrap up this sort of general topic, or well, do you have any, Marika, do you have any other, I know that, is that all you have for OneStop? Is that all the updates you have? I don't want to cut off discussion, but
anything else for OneStop? I mean, I'll reach out to Mark Purple if I don't hear.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, just to kind of wrap up this general diff, I know Rob's on a call right now, but just to wrap up this general diff and OneStop topic, just for next steps, because I don't want all this, really good information to just sort of fall to the wayside. Do we want to, I also agree with Claire that, advisory should be aware of this as well, and hopefully would be supportive of it. What do we want to do for next steps? Should we try to get on advisory's agenda? Should we try to get on Board of Selectmen's agenda? How do, and do we want us or Rob or some, do we want to bring in Rob Dolan, or would Rob Anderson be appropriate to just give a sort of general overview? Or do we just want to forward some information to them and say, maybe with a little summary explaining why we think this could be a useful tool and what the next step should be? What are people's thoughts on that?
My vote is to see if we can get an actual presentation. I think it's great that we send a link. I'm actually going to read through these links and stuff, but to actually have someone walk through it to help explain it. And then if they ask a question, we have a professional who knows it very well to kind of go back and forth real time, as opposed to having read something, ask a question, we wait 2 weeks, we get back an answer. It's just going to prolong what is already a long process. So if Rob are very amenable, which we would be very gracious for their time to present, that's my personal vote on that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, if we just forward a packet of information, no one's going to read it, or if they do, they're not going to, absorb it in the same way. It certainly helps to have somebody knowledgeable. So yeah, once we have Rob Anderson's attention back, we can I'd love to get his thoughts on that, because I don't want to impose too much more time on Rob Dolan, but if he's willing, and I'm wondering if maybe there's an opportunity to, instead of having to do 2 additional presentations, to try to get advisory and Board of Selectmen maybe on the same platform to listen to it. But either way, I do think that that's the best. Sorry, I'm just looking at a comment that's coming through. But I do think that, if nothing else, we should share this information, because it's great information. There were a couple of comments in the chat. I just want to read them so as not to, sorry, I don't want to lose them. So I'm going back a few minutes, I think.
No, so sorry, Julie. I mean, before you read all the, I think, public comments. So I think what's also important is to see what response we got from the OneStop, because this really ties into the whole Route 9 plan, because we talk about infrastructure, zoning, all kinds of things. And I think if we have, they have connections with MassDevelopment. So if Diff would be the correct tool for Route 9, maybe they would have other economic development tools that they would recommend. I think that would be helpful too, before we kind of go ahead and go with this, before we explore other options.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to make sure that the comments are read in.
Yeah.
Do you want to? I'm happy to.
I can read. So let me see. Comments from Sarah Hucker, from the planning, town planner, assistant town planner. It's important to identify a project manager for the Route 9 OneStop submission. Yeah, I think we all agree. And then from Mr. Litt, Diff is a funding mechanism. It shouldn't drive the process. You need to start with a specific project with detailed funding needs, then work on how to get the money. Talking about Diffs now is premature and a waste of effort, in his opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't think it hurts to just start understanding what tools are available.
I would agree. I think it doesn't hurt to get ourselves educated on what's out there. We might not be in a position to implement it right now, but I think we're doing ourselves a disservice to not, know what's out there down the pipeline as, the OneStop maybe comes to fruition and we start to piece things together a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it never hurts to have a broad understanding of what tools might be available, even if they're not available to us at this second.
Yeah, because I feel like we're always kind of playing catch up. So
totally.
It would be really good to just know what's out there, and as things start to develop or start to come together, we kind of have things in our wheelhouse that we can tap into.
I agree, and I think this aligns with, as Claire said, advisory has made pretty clear that we need more revenue in town. We don't want to be just slashing. So this is a potentially a potential revenue opportunity. So at the very least, I think everyone, advisory as a Board of Selectmen, should take some interest in understanding how it works, what we would need to take advantage of it. All right, great. Any other, before we go forward, does anybody else have any in the public have any comments on this discussion or want to weigh in?
I don't see any hands up.
Okay. All right. Marika, do you want to go on to the coordinator report?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I just spoke about the OneStop, so I'll follow up with Mark Purple and then inform everyone. I just wanted to give a quick, I guess, a business update. Board of Selectmen had a meeting on Tuesday, special meeting in the morning, just to approve a business license for a company called RAD Exotics. It's a high-end car, I guess, dealership that's going into the former Prime Volvo building. They currently busy painting it and renovating it. The business is started by a local resident. So Mr. Sigler, who's is starting, I guess, on his own. He lives on Clifford Road, and he hopes to open in June with a soft launch and have a grand opening in September. So that was good news. And there's 2 other businesses that the town is working with that is looking to open locations or looking for locations along Route 9. One is the JC Grounds, the commercial snow removal and landscaping company. They purchased 200 Turnpike Road, which is on the side of the Cadillac dealership, on the other side of Middle Road. And they are submitting formal site plan applications. They want to do some renovations, so that's good news. And then there's another company, an investment firm that's looking to operate car condos in town. So they're still looking at various possible locations. So it would be like a building where people can buy garages for their high-end cars, as well as a social element to it, where people can meet and talk about cars. So they are currently actually looking at the old Andrea restaurant location as well. So we're meeting with them. The town is various departments and helping them as much as we can. So I'll keep you updated on where that goes. So what else? Outdoor dining has started at Tommaso's. Ola is planning to have their tent up soon. I spoke to Ola and they're actually very interested in having permanent outdoor dining. So I think we should revisit that. I might reach out to Capital Group as well because it affects them as well, see how they feel about it. And then we can, I guess, continue the process that we started a couple of months ago.
As a newbie here, and I'm sorry, I have to jump in 2 minutes for a work call. Who is it? The Board of Selectmen that makes the call about whether or not a local business can have permanent outdoor seating, or is that like who? How
well,
is that
I think we'll
made?
have to go in this. We'll have to go to the planning board because if they would have, outdoor seating, they'll have to change the configuration of the parking lot. They'll lose some parking spaces, so we'll have to go to the planning board. Got it. As well as Board of Selectmen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that's my quick business update. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Great. So Claire, do you have any update you can share on the wastewater management or anything else?
I do. I'm working with the Western Sampson project manager who was assigned to it, and trying to get, since we don't have Tom LaFlamme anymore, he was our GIS guy. I have provided him with as much stuff from the GIS system as I can. And the new person is the new IT guy is so busy. I've actually put in a call to get a couple questions on GIS answered. I put in a call to Tom up at his new job. I'm waiting to hear back from him for some information that they need. So I'm giving him all of his information that they need in order to start. They're writing the report now just from all of the stuff that I have provided with them. Real quick, they are going to need time with Paul Pazinski. He is the best person in town to provide them with everything that, all the background information, because the town does not have a town engineer. Paul is currently on a contract, which was his old contract that expires at the end of June. It's only 6 hours a week for working with the Board of Health. So I had talked before at the last meeting about using consulting funding for paying for Paul. I have not spoken to Mark Purple about that. And the reason is because there is an in-kind services match with this grant. So out of the $50,000, the town has to cough up 12.5. We are currently at a quarter by quarter, because I have all this tracked, and if anybody needs to see it, it's all in a spreadsheet. We have we're running at about 19% in terms of the match. So my thought is, and I have already broached the subject with Paul, that that EDC, because there's consulting money, could actually pay for, instead of paying for Paul out of the grant, they could pay for the consulting of Paul, which would be probably it would be under $2,000 out of the consulting money. That $2,000 then would go towards the town's in-kind services.
Okay, that sounds good.
I mean, I know that was fast. And I don't know if you guys have to make a motion to, because obviously the work that Paul is going to be doing is going to be at a different rate. But I talked to him about hours, his rate, and I said, well, how about if we cap it at about $2,000? Do you think that would, do the trick? And you guys have the money, and it would be a big help for providing what we have to do with the grant.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. So, I mean, I'm not into making motions here, but I guess maybe only because you know how everybody has to vote on everything. So, and the next time you meet is going to be in the middle of May.
So it would be, so we want to vote to make a motion to engage Paul Pazinski at a contract rate up to $2,000 to work with with the consultants on the wastewater management feasibility study.
Yes.
Okay, so moved.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll do a roll call vote. Hold on, let me get my participants. Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Oh wait, do we have enough? I think
Oh,
Here
you
we
might not
are.
have a quorum.
4.
yeah, sorry, we lost
Oh, yeah.
Rob and Alan for calls. So we may have
But
to
we're
table
fine.
this. So are we good on quorum or no?
Yes, we do. We have
Okay,
4.
all right, so,
Four.
okay, me, yes, okay, we're good. Motion passes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, and I know we've lost Rob and Alan to 9:30 calls, so just, I think the only other thing on the agenda is
The minutes and just
Claire,
to be
we
aware
don't
that
have minutes though, right?
only April 9th, sorry.
Oh, I'm
Only
sorry,
April 9th minutes,
hold on.
and the January minutes we will,
Yeah, I saw that we didn't get all the minutes. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was expiring terms. It looks like Suzanne, Michael, and Rob have your terms are up at the end of June. We hope you all will continue to join us and renew. I know Rob's not here, but I just wanted to put that out there, and just, not to put anyone on the spot, but you're not allowed to leave. So, but think about it, and certainly talk to me or John if you have any questions. Where's my, sorry. Look at, sorry, just let me pull up the minutes. Okay, so we have minutes for April 9th, the April 9th meeting.
Yes.
Suzanne and I are both absent on that one.
Yeah.
We'd be two of the quorum here, wouldn't we?
Yeah, so if they abstain for being absent, does that mean we shouldn't vote on them? Does that mean we're out of time?
That's a good question.
I don't think so. Whoops.
Sorry, what did you say? I don't know. Claire, do you know if that makes sense?
I think, well, first of all, you can, even if you weren't at a meeting, you can vote to approve the minutes. And there's a clause that says as long as they're written enough for you to be able to understand. And then the second part of it is, as long as you, because this is what they do with the advisory, as long as you have 4 people to vote, even if you did abstain, you still have 4 votes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm reading them, so I can comfortable voting on them.
And I think the nutshell is as long as they're written so that somebody who's familiar with it can understand what it says.
Yeah, it certainly does that.
Okay. I just wanted to put it out there. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion to approve the minutes of, or does anyone have any comments on it before I start? Questions? Okay, motion to approve the minutes of April 9th, 2021.
I so move. This is Chris.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. All right, Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Okay, great.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, I think that's mostly it for our agenda. I know Mike wanted to talk more about committee roles, but since we don't have, since we're losing people, I say we table that till next time. Is there any public comments?
No.
Okay, great. So our next meeting is Thursday, May 22nd at 7:30. Is that right?
No, what did I say?
No. Oh, sorry, May
that's
13th. May 13th.
Thursday, May
sorry.
13th.
May 13th, 2021, though, not 2022.
Yeah.
There's a typo there.
Wishful thinking.
May-
And you wrote the dates in the European style, so I got confused. Okay, so Thursday, May 13th. So that's as we're alternating, so that's our Thursday evening meeting at 7:30 p.m.
So 7:30 p.m.
Yes.
Yeah.
I might be late. We have baseball games 7 nights a week now between them. So they're completely on the same schedule at all. So
I'm joining you in baseball world, Suzanne. My youngest is starting. I've never done baseball. We're like mostly soccer. So, but yeah, we have something every day of the week now.
yep, we are.
And if I knew that baseball was 3 days a week for my 6-year-old, like I maybe would have thought about it more.
Yeah, we're at 4 or 5 for Rocco, and then the other one has 3. So between,
Oh my God.
silly, but it's fine.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.